Hey, Diana, I think we are live.
I think
Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad you're here with me tonight, Diana.
I'm glad to be
I
here.
am Susan. If you don't know who we are coaches on Leslie Bernick's team, and you are on her public Facebook page. Am I right about that, Diana?
That is true. We're on public Facebook page, and we should be streaming to YouTube as well.
It looks like we are, and it looks like we've got viewers on both. But if you're here, I see Laureen. Thank you for saying hi. Hi, Faith.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got Karen helping us out today. So welcome, everybody. It's good to see you. And it's evening where I am. And Diana, it's evening for you as well. We're both Eastern time, but where are you all coming in from? I'd love to see that.
Some of these names seem familiar to me. I remember seeing Laureen on Monday. Welcome,
Awesome.
Faith and Karen. It's so nice that you greet us. Linda, Karen, Laureen, Minnesota, South Dakota, North Carolina. I recently visited North Carolina. It was my first zip line. over the Appalachian Mountains. It was amazing.
Amazing.
It was.
How did you feel about that?
Well, my heart rate was way off the charts right before. I almost didn't do it. But as soon as I leapt, oh my goodness, it was an amazing experience. I'm so glad I did it.
You didn't let fear stop you.
We did it. I think we did it 3 times. My kids filmed it. We got one of those GoPro cameras. Oh, it was one of those moments in overcoming your fear and just diving into something.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Mary. Someone from my home state, Ohio.
And we got a Michigander there. Hey, Deb.
Yeah, hi, Deb. I recognize her as well. We've got Arizona, the home of Leslie and Leanne.
Mm-hmm. So we're here to discuss fading away to flourishing. How do you grow into a whole person when you're still in an emotionally destructive marriage or relationship? So I feel like this is a big question. And I know from experience how destructive it can be on yourself, your body, your ability to be who God created you to be.
Right.
And so I think it's important that we come and just talk about this. So I'm wondering if we can kind of engage you in the chat a bit. If you feel comfortable, this is Leslie's public Facebook page. So you want to be mindful that anybody can pop on this site and read your comments. So be mindful of that as you answer this. But where should we start with fading? How would you even know you're fading?
That's right. Well, first of all, what is fading? And how do you know that's where you're at?
Yeah. I love that we talk about these things because I think these aren't things people think about, right? And we like to pose these questions to you to get you kind of thinking of what is that like?
We're focusing on being woke in the good way, right? Like, what am I awakening to? Where if I'm looking at myself and I'm assessing myself and I'm in a destructive relationship, am I flourishing or am I fading? So I guess the first thing is awareness of where am I at on the spectrum here? And what does fading look like if I feel like I'm experiencing that?
Yeah, so what do y'all think?
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you about that. How do you even know if that's what's happening?
How would you know, Diana? Let's get the ball rolling here. Oh, losing myself, Lorraine says.
Yeah, I would say the first indication is an absence of joy.
Oh, yeah.
An absence of the ability to find pleasure in anything. I would describe it more as fading. It's kind of like I'm just kind of with my head down, just kind of walking and pushing forward. You know, there's not many highs. Maybe I'm not really in touch with the lows. I'm just kind of, I would maybe call it numbing.
Feeling numb. Yeah. A lot of have tos, maybe not a lot of get tos.
That's a good one. I've been told I need to enter into play when I'm in those phases, right?
Mm-hmm.
Disoriented.
Just
Yeah, you
that's a
got.
good one too.
Mm-hmm.
When you have no sense of direction, no sense of your own identity, and working towards what you value. Yeah, that's a great definition.
That's very well said. No sense
Mm-hmm.
of direction. I don't know really where I'm going any longer. And the loss
Mm-hmm.
of your own identity. And how does that even happen? How does that
Yeah,
happen?
great question. Yeah, we were talking a little bit before. I think it's kind of a slow fade where you don't always notice it.
It's yeah, just one kind of chip away at who you are. Maybe a little bit too much placating and pleasing, giving
Mm.
in, keeping the peace, little by little, and before you know it, your voice is silent, even to yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It,
Yeah.
I love. There's that one song, but it's speaking about sin, and I think it might be by Mercy Me. Somebody out there might know it better than me, but it's called "It's a Slow Fade."
Mm-hmm.
But it's really talking about when I think it says it's a slow fade when
When
from
you give yourself away.
yes, yeah, but it's talking more about when you're engaging in sin. But I think it would that part of it. There it is, casting crowds. That part of it would apply here. It's a very slow fade, and many of you who are our listeners here have I believe can identify with that if you've been in a long-term relationship and it's been a journey and it didn't start out that way. And a lot of times when I'm working with individuals, I will resource vitality, moments in their life where they felt fully alive and fully joyful.
Mm-hmm.
um, and because sometimes we've been doing this so long in this destructive pattern and in such a fading mentality that we don't remember what it feels like to be lit up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Resourcing vitality, you called it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those moments where you felt like you could just conquer the world and everything was in front of you and it was hopeful and like what was the next thing that you were going to tackle, and and you looked forward to every day, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember we were talking about how long we've been married, and I told you I got married a little bit later in life, and in my 20s. So just silly things that we did. When you think about flourishing, this might not sound like flourishing, but I think what we used to, Goodyear has this big fountain in their tech center. It's a long tube and just water splurts from it. And you could drive up to it and drive around it. And we used to go for ice cream. I was a little bit older than my friends because I started college later. We used to just I'd drive and I'd park and they'd get out and they'd run through the fountain. And you really weren't supposed to be doing that. But just that feeling of aliveness, almost kind of like soaring over the Appalachian Mountains. Yeah.
Amazing.
So those days are long gone. Say more, Faith. What days? The days of flourishing? I hope not, because that's what we're here to talk about today. And Amber's relating to what I'm saying. You know, those thoughts of like just being youthful and having all of that energy and all of the vitality and the joy of what's to come. I think you kind of lose that when you're in a pattern of heaviness and destruction. And, you said it well when you say, I'm no longer that bubbly, outgoing, friendly person. That's a
Mm-hmm.
total fade of who you're meant to be. And that does come from keeping the peace and walking on eggshells.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Feeling beaten down inside. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Grace is saying when you read your journal and look at the date in disbelief, that's been 2 years since you wrote it. And it feels like it's only been a few months. Where did the
Oh,
time go? When you sort of lose lose track of time because things are so heavy and hard.
And you're just trying to maintain or to survive.
Yeah.
I have some more descriptions if you want me to talk about it.
Yeah, I would love that.
Okay. So, I asked, what's happening? How do we know that we're not flourishing? And you asked me that question. I often we get these checklists, right? And I think one of the ways in which you know you're not flourishing is the connection between your mind and your body.
Mm.
Sometimes your mind just wants to keep going and it's just pushing forward. Maybe you have children and you have to function, or a job where you're functioning. And so your left brain is telling you, just keep going. But your body might be telling you the real truth. And we carry that in terms of like how much energy we have, right? We talk about vitality, and energy is the opposite. And I think sometimes our physical symptoms can be an indicator of whether or not we're flourishing. And I don't know about
Mhm.
you, Susan, but we've been through COVID. I've had foot surgery. I definitely know the difference between flourishing physically and mentally and not. And
Mhm.
when I'm not flourishing physically, I don't have a lot of strength. And we can categorize that as emotional or physical strength. But also, there's a lot of physical pain in the body,
Mhm.
certainly inflammation, even like some symptoms of arthritis and things like that can be from internal sources of stress, anxiety. And so I guess my question is, to the audience, what are you even noticing in your physical body as you observe your mind and your body in terms of what signs it's telling you that you're fading?
Mhm. Yeah, it's such a great point. Tuning into your body and really listening to what it's telling you. What are those physical symptoms
Mhm.
that are telling you you're not well?
It can be headaches,
Mhm.
that you might be blaming on, I'm just drinking too much caffeine. It can be, why is my stomach upset? Maybe it's something I ate, but maybe that's a consistent pattern of walking on eggshells, or just trying to manage the climate and the environment where you're
Mhm.
finding the destructive relationships. And it doesn't necessarily mean that your destructive relationships are always at home. Some of us have destructive relationships in the office or in our workplaces. There you go. We're starting to see that.
Mhm.
Cortisol is the enemy when it comes to living in these situations, because
Mhm.
our bodies, I'm told, I had someone who educated me on this, that we only have a certain amount of cortisol, and you literally can use all your cortisol. Did you know that?
I had not heard that. Tell us more.
Well, it's a rare thing that occurs, but it can occur, and so I don't want our audience to get all freaked out about it, but it can happen. You have so much cortisol, and your adrenal system, when it's been spiking with the cortisol for years and years and years, it has to adapt to that. And at some point, your adrenal system can get exhausted, and when that system fails, it predisposes us to all kinds of illnesses.
Mm.
Adrenal fatigue, yes. If you were to use up all your cortisol, you would have to get it artificially, and you cannot live without it.
Hmm.
Yeah,
So another reason why it's important to pay attention.
huge, huge.
Yeah.
And the topic that we're talking about today, I think, is so relevant because this is time for you all, as Susan has made a really amazing chart for us to look at. It's time for you to look into, maybe this is time for you. So go for it,
Here we
Susan.
go. Yeah, I've got my little scale. Where are you on this continuum? So we've got fading to flourishing. Are you completely faded out at a -5? Or maybe you're completely flourishing at a +5. Or perhaps you're finding yourself at 0. I'm still in confusion and I don't know. I don't know who I am, where I am. I don't know what's going on. Where are you feeling? So if you feel comfortable, put that in the chat.
Yeah.
A -5, completely faded out.
So that might be, I don't really even have the energy to think this through. I don't have the energy, it feels like, to take on one more thing. Um, a 0 is, I'm just stuck in confusion.
Oh.
I have energy, but I don't know where to put it. And I'm just kind of running from one thing to the next. I don't know where to move. I don't know who I am. I guess a -5 would be, I don't even care. Right?
Mhm. Yeah. And if you're at a +5, you feel like you're in line with God, you're living the life He's called you to live. You've got energy, you're feeling that vitality and that joy.
Mhm.
So we've got some low numbers, -5,
We've got some honesty
-3.
going on here.
We do. 0, a 1. Yeah, I think it's important to do this every once in a while
Absolutely.
to scale how you're feeling in your body and your emotions, your energy levels, so that you can start keeping track of that and to notice which direction are you headed,
So
and maybe even decide which direction you want to head.
put that up one more time because that's a great chart. So one of the tools that we can offer you, if you pull it back just a little bit, okay, no, you're good. So again, fade it out. I'm numb. I have no energy or vitality. I can't even like really kind of have the energy to figure out what I want, who I am, what I need. Um, and then there's 0 where I don't have clarity. I'm confused. I have some energy. I just don't know where to direct it. And optimal flourishing. So this is a great scale. Thanks, Susan. And you can
Yeah.
put this in your journal, as you said, and check in daily and ask yourself some clarifying questions about where I'm at and what's the next step. And we're going to get to maybe some of the things that you can do that might provide some relief if you're in the 0 to negative range.
Mhm. Absolutely, to kind of move you up on that scale just a little
Mhm.
bit, to head you in a different direction than you may be going right now.
So a part of that accounting, and I love that some of you have weighed in on your body. So where do you notice that your -3 is? Where do you notice your 0 is? Where do you notice
Mhm.
your 5 is? And Lori's saying, feeling like I have heavy rocks in my gut. That's such a
Mm,
great description.
it
And I would
is.
imagine that's where you feel your heaviness, Lori. That's where your body is carrying it.
Yeah.
And that can be one of the indicators that you'll know when things are changing, when that lifts, barely hanging on. We've got some things going on here. We've got some zeros. So describe your 0. What's the 0? How would you describe the 0 for you?
Are you asking in the chat or are you asking
Yeah.
me?
Well, I
Yeah,
think you could
yeah.
help us with an explanation.
Yeah, I think it is that place of confusion where you know something isn't right. Like you said, there's some energy there, but you're still trying to decide what kind of situation am I in? Am I even in? And what do I need to do about it?
Yeah.
Right? What direction do I want to be heading?
I like that, Susan. Something isn't right, but I can't quite figure out what yet. That's
Mhm.
still really good awareness, right? And the reason, ladies, that I ask you to tie into what's going on with your body is because your body can sometimes tell you things that your subconscious or your conscious mind isn't fully aware of yet. So we're doing a complete assessment as
Mhm.
well as an analysis of where am I subjectively at on the scale? How is my body carrying this? Where's my energy level?
So important to do that check in.
Hmm.
And I find people aren't able to do that for you. You may find people telling you, oh, you're fine. You may look fine on the surface, even, but you know yourself well. You know if you're having hair loss or if your stomach hurts or if you're achy and have no energy in a way that other people aren't going to notice. And so it's important that you know yourself and to pay attention to yourself. 0 is like I do not fit in with life around me. A black fog.
Mm.
What a description.
Clarity needs to come on board there, huh? A little bit more of discovery. Yeah. And so we talked about this when we were when we were meeting right before our live, that you might be experiencing symptoms anywhere from I'm numb to I'm having anxiety. And I see Chris is saying constantly feeling like your heart races, like you run away. You maybe walk like an old lady and you have hair loss and you want to be free, but there's, there's a little bit more of an activating negative energy there where I feel like I need I need to maybe get somewhere else. I need to escape whatever it is I'm currently experiencing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see a lot of hair loss here. That's definitely was a sign for me. Things were not going well. Hair loss. Yeah. Noticeable hair loss. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got 37 years, 3 months. Oh, only 3 months divorce. Faith, you're on your way to healing. But I hear, Faith is saying that she's not functioning at this point, numb and anxious and lots of tears.
Mm.
Sounds like there's some supportive work to do there.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you see you're not alone? See all the similarities happening in the chat. There are a lot of women who are experiencing this, which is why, Leslie developed her team, right? Is because there's so many women struggling with this. And we want to be here to help support you, but I see that you can support each other, even in the chat. And it's so necessary, right? To find that support. So finding clarity is important. Finding education, finding support, finding relief, all of those things.
So becoming aware of what's happening, we're giving you some tools and some ways of kind of wrapping your brain around, where am I at with this? What's happening for me physically? What's happening for me emotionally? I think it's really important to look at the physical manifestations of being in a destructive relationship. And we're using the term destructive, but some of you, I think, maybe categorize that in a little bit more extreme language, because I think there's a continuum, right, Susan, from destructive to abusive.
Mm-hmm.
And so we want to make sure that you understand we're not minimizing that, but we're using the term destructive to categorize anything on that continuum.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, digestive issues and sleep problems. Sure, body's achy, gaining weight. I notice when I'm under stress, I have inflammation and acid reflux. When we have something big going on, like, I don't know, maybe we'll say like a huge conference where we have to speak at or something like that. Well, I'll get acid reflux for a couple weeks.
I'm with you, Diana.
Yeah, if that's a temporary thing in response to life, and that's your body gearing up, but we don't want to live in that state every day of our life. It does drain us of our vitality, and really, like we had said, knowing who you are.
So could we shift for just a minute, Diana, and put our dream caps on and imagine what would it look like and feel like to be flourishing?
I'm there with you.
Yeah. What do you all think?
Well,
so if we're dreaming about moving in a new direction, what would that even look like and feel like?
So I'm going to give you ladies a vision of what flourishing seems like to me in my child adult mind. I just get this image of just skipping. Remember when you were a kid and you just could skip, and like there was nothing, no concerns, or laying on the grass. I remember laying on the grass on a cloudy day, just watching the clouds go by, on like a sunshiny day. In Ohio, we always have clouds. So, or skipping, like what's it like to go out on your sidewalk and just skip, to me, that's just vitality, that's lightness, that's optimism. What does flourishing?
Playfulness.
Yeah, playfulness. What does flourishing, maybe what does that sound like it could be for you? Or what's your idea of flourishing? Oh, yeah.
Laughing again, being with friends, becoming self-sufficient, Yeah, I love that. Pursuing your dreams and being successful. Yeah, I do get a picture also of playfulness, but there's something bigger because, I think living a Christian life as a woman isn't always playful. Sometimes it is hard, and we can be living in hard and flourishing at the same time, and still finding vitality in who God has called us to be, I think, even when it doesn't feel lighthearted and playful. But that's certainly an aspect as I put my dream cap on that I would want, right? A nice heel kick.
I always like being playful. I do. Sometimes when I have to be serious, I have a hard time not being silly in my head.
Mm,
So this is, you guys have so many, you're getting it. Not
yes.
always guessing your choices or how others react to them. You just get to live life spontaneously. And knowing that your choices are your choices and you're walking in who you are, and you do that without apology, without justifying or defending your choices or who you are.
Hmm.
Also, maybe without criticism or condemnation, internally or externally, right?
Hmm.
Jumping in
Yeah.
puddles with the kiddos.
Yeah,
That's,
Lori says the opening scene of Sound of Music, mountains and singing.
I mean, seriously, ladies, we need to resource some of that so that lights up those centers in our brains and we can just come away from this webinar saying, yep, that's my vision. That's my focus. That's where I'm heading.
Living in a musical. Yes. But also not being affected by awful triggers. That's what Grace is saying. That's true as well. So it's balancing both of those things, right? Being able to regulate your emotions. So even when life is hard and you're not singing and dancing and twirling in the mountains, that you still feel confident in being able to manage difficult emotions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe you're not so consistently affected by those really awful triggers. Um, and then when you are affected by an awful trigger, um, seldom you know what to do to get to calm, and you can find that calmness and that peace,
Mm-hmm.
so that you're not living in a dysregulated state. And I love the waking up with joy in my heart. That's a big one,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah. And freedom.
Laughing. I
Mhm.
I haven't had a good laugh in a while. Hopefully, at our retreat, we'll have some good laughs.
I'm sure we will.
One with God, knowing His love at a level never felt before. I
Mm,
believe that is the essence of joy.
absolutely.
I think you nailed it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Composing music again. Yeah, when you're using your gifts that God has given you to
Mm,
create something beautiful,
wow.
I mean, that's the essence of flourishing, isn't it?
Yes, and finding that artistic, expressive part of yourself. That's awesome. So Amber's saying, finding contentment with along with her 11-year-old, just weeding and
Mm,
being out in the yard, listening to the sounds outside and her wind chime, not feeling negativity, but just bringing in all of that. That's really living in the moment and attuning to everything that's around you. And we're able to do that when we can find a place of clarity and emotional safety.
mhm. Yeah, and it's so important, right? Find emotional safety and have those sort of relationships to be able to experience that. Certainly as believers, we can experience that with God, our time with God, our time in prayer, experiencing his love washing over us.
Right.
But as humans with other humans, it's sometimes wonderful to experience that as well. And I believe, we get hurt in relationships, but we also heal in relationships.
We do.
And finding those good, supportive relationships are so important.
So Susan, are we ready to transition and give a little bit of some of our own ideas about what it might look like to flourish when you're in a specifically destructive relationship?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay,
Let's dive in.
let's do that because we want to be of help to you today and give you some ideas of what you can come away and practice. And really, we will give you lots of ideas today. And I'm just going to give this disclaimer. It's easy to say these things, stepping into them and practicing them is really what we're here to do. And so we'll give you an opportunity to join us in a group coaching experience to step into these in a deeper way and practice them with us. But we still want you to have something to come away with today as well, so that you know what it might look like and how it might be different for you if you're not experiencing flourishing, even though you're in a destructive place.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And Karen is putting in the chat for us. If you have a question for Diana or myself, you can send that privately through leslievernick.com/question/. And you can go to the link. Karen's also put that in the chat, as well as it's right down below here on the screen, to check out the information. So if you click on that link, you're not automatically signing yourself up. You're just checking out the information. What would it look like to step into our Walking in Core Strength 3-month coaching group? And you can go to leslievernick.com/group coaching to see more about that and view the times that we're offering that and what that would look like for you.
You know, as after we get into a little bit more of the content, we can tell a little bit more about what that experience is like. If you're new to us, we can explain what that looks like. And so you have some idea of what you might experience in those groups. But we've got a whole list of things here, Susan, of what does it look like to step into growth and wholeness, even when you're in a destructive relationship. And I'm just going to say the first one. And I think the first one is stop getting duped.
Oh, yes.
Stop
Yes.
getting
Say some
duped.
more about that.
Well, you recognize that not every kind gesture is a step toward healing and restoration of your relationship. These, whether they're minor or maybe they might seemingly be larger acts of love and kindness, they may not be a genuine desire, an effort toward change and a healthy relationship. It can be manipulation, control, and confusion. And you'll know that if you're in this state of fluctuation and confusion.
Yeah.
And so these sporadic gestures can grab your emotions and cause confusion for you. And so what you're looking for is not sporadic steps toward maybe kindness or maybe love. What you're looking for is some real remorse, sincere remorse, and repentance. Not just, well, we've got terms for that, and I'm sure you've all heard it. Love bombing. I call it breadcrumbing. It's so confusing. It's so confusing because we're created for relationships. We're designed to long for them. And as women, we're just helpers, right? We want to facilitate, we want to encourage, we want to provide for opportunities for growth and invite healthy change. And so if we see a little iota of change, we think, oh, it's a difference. But behavior is the most consistent way to observe what change is possible. And so you're going to look for two things. You're going to look for sincere remorse and repentance, not just some kind acts, right? And we're going to need that to be demonstrated across time for consistency. So the mandate is to stop getting sucked into the fantasy that maybe he or the relationship, or if it's someone at work, maybe this person is changing. When that happens, go ahead, Susan.
I was just going to say, it's such a good point because it is so confusing. And sometimes, in some instances, that kindness is just a different form of manipulation, right? It still has an agenda. It's still meant to control and to confuse and manipulate. It just comes in a nicer package. And then when you start accepting that package, you can get duped.
Yeah, you've been starved for so long, It's like what was it, the rich young ruler? You know what I mean? He was ready to eat the scraps of the table, you know what I mean? Because he was starved. So when you're starved, you know, you'll make a meal out of breadcrumbs and it'll feel like a feast for you. And
Mhm.
especially if you've been in it that long, you mistake what should be a minor act for major love, major care, major concern. And it is meant to confuse you. And I think the thing is don't be duped into this spiral of these small acts thinking that change is occurring. And that's, Susan, that's why we say journal.
Oh, yes.
Journal so that you see cycles, right?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
documenting the truth for yourself because, as some of you have already said in the chat, you lose touch with some of that, right? As those memories kind of fade away and you forget when it was or how it went down. And so keeping track of that, not documenting a record of wrongs so much to use against somebody, but just for your own information so you can start watching for patterns and gain awareness.
Absolutely. Reality and clarity. So when you say to yourself, why am I so worn out? Why am I a 2? Why am I a 0? And you pull out your journal. Oh, this is why.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. So what else? We've got tools here, ladies. Steps to growth and wholeness.
Yeah, well, I love when in Leslie's book, The Emotionally Destructive Relationship or the Emotionally Destructive Marriage, she talks about core strength, right?
Mhm.
And I think that helps so much in getting in touch with yourself and in tune with your relationships. And so you've talked a little bit about that being centered in truth and what's really going on, right? And sometimes it takes a lot of courage to look at the real truth and telling yourself truth, right? Not gaslighting yourself. Oh, that's not really what happened. I didn't really see that. It's not that big of a deal. But really documenting what happened and believing yourself and what you felt and being really committed to that honesty and not pretending that this is a relationship that you want it to be or it's going in the direction you want it to go.
I like
So
that.
that's just the C of core.
I like that. That's my favorite. That's my favorite letter in the
Is
word.
it?
It is. I like that committed to truth, inside and out. Um, because I think we dupe ourselves, and I think we use this term gaslighting. We talk a lot about like how people do that to us. But if you've been gaslit for a long time, you do it to yourself in your own mind, and you start to make excuses, and you start to not know what's real. Um, and so it's really important that we stay committed to truth. And one of the tools that I use, Susan, is I ask people to write down clarifying truths. And it might sound like this person lies. This person will harm me if I share my heart. That,
Mhm.
so committed to truth is I'm no longer going to dupe myself. I'm going to tell myself realistically what's possible and what's not, and what's not. Well, let's use different terms. I'm going to tell myself what has been happening and what's not likely to happen based on behavior so that I can step into the reality of truth. It's like if you were my friend, Susan, and well, you are my friend, but if you were a friend who consistently lied to me or talked poor about me to someone else and it always got back to me, would I continue to open my heart to you? Maybe if I didn't walk in truth. But if I walked in truth and I stood in what God showed me, what I needed to know, I would be able to protect my heart.
Mhm.
And that would look differently, right? But if you're a person like me who's very forgiving and very forgetful, sometimes you need to write those lessons down. And I might have to write, like, this friend is not trustworthy. I can be kind, I can be loving, but I cannot be trusting with this person.
Mhm.
And I don't know about you ladies, but I have to write those things down until I finally learn them.
It's a great tool. Yeah, another thing that happens, I think, when we're in destructive relationships as we begin to isolate and distance ourselves emotionally from other people.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've mentioned a few times, you need that support. You need to be open. So that's the O of core, is being open to the Holy Spirit, but wise others in your life as well. And so Coach Diana has just talked about, how do you discern if somebody's a wise, trusting, safe other in your life? As you test that out and you tell yourself truth. And when you found people in your life who will give you honest feedback, will be safe for you, can be trusted with details of your life, it's important to spend time with them, right? Let them into your life. Let them encourage you. Let them give you feedback.
There we go. Absolutely. Let those in that are safe to be let in. And I just put in the chat for you ladies, Proverbs 4:23, take responsibility for what you do not want to invite in by guarding your heart. You get to guard your heart. You don't have to be an open book. So one of the ways you stay in a flourishing capacity in a destructive relationship is you become very wise with guarding your heart. You observe what people do, and you don't give them opportunity after opportunity to be different if they're not demonstrating remorse or repentance.
Mm-hmm.
You change how you relate with that person. Yeah. And yeah, April saying, I didn't even know it was abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that's why I'm saying check your body, because your body carries things that your conscious mind doesn't want to acknowledge, because it's a self-protective mechanism. Your brain is always in protect mode. It wants to shield and protect us. And sometimes that's not a good thing, right, Susan? If we're not willing to face, and we always talk about what's it like after you leave, you know what I mean? Then after if you're in a destructive place and you get away for a while, notice the difference of how you feel, how you think, the clarity that comes up for it.
Yeah. Some abuse is very sneaky, right? It's very sneaky. It's not like a black eye all the time, right? Where it's obvious to everyone what's happened. And so it's not always obvious, even when it's happening to you, when it creeps up on you. And so it's important to have those people who are looking in on your life, who you can trust, you feel safe with, who can start to help you notice, even notice patterns with yourself. Some friends might say, I noticed you've had a stomach ache for the better part of a month. What's going on with you? Right? You may not even be tuned in with that, especially if you're under great distress.
So back to the friend thing. Which is not the case, if I found that my friend Susan, was not trustworthy, I would create some emotional distance. And yes, you have permission to create emotional distance. And what does that look like? It means I'm not going to lie or pretend to that person, but I'm not going to invite them in close proximity as one of my core people. I'm not going to share important things or give them information that might come back to harm me, because when you do that, you're affirming that I get to be a person independent of you. I don't exist just for your purposes.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a self, right? Which is really what we focus on in our core work. Identifying yourself. We talked all about what does fading away look like. And the work of core, whether you do it with us in our group or whether you do it on your own, the work of core is the work of maturity and really finding yourself and grounding in who you are in your core self. And there's some key principles to that. Susan's mentioned 2 of them. There are 4 there. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was just going to point out how that emotional distancing could go either way, right? It could move you towards fading if you're isolating and blocking people out of your life. And it could move you towards flourishing if you're using it to protect yourself with good boundaries and discernment, right? It depends on how you're looking at it, and making sure that it's a choice and not a default.
I love that. That's really good. That's really wise. Am I using emotional distancing for my well-being or for my detriment?
Mm-hmm.
Who am I emotionally distancing from? The people who are speaking truth to me and want to help me, or the people that are really not, as the Bible
Yeah.
would say, for me?
And I think that really speaks to the R step, being responsible for yourself, right? Making choices that are for your benefit and for your own health, owning that, while being respectful of other people as well, right? So we're certainly, we're talking about setting boundaries, we're talking about doing that in a respectful way, honoring other people, but also protecting yourself and being responsible for yourself.
And I think a part of that responsibility, taking responsibility for ourselves, which is what we do focus on as well in the work that we do with our ladies, is discovering who yourself is.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we're coming out of fading away, or we don't, or we're in that confusion phase, we really need to understand who we are, what we stand for, and how to walk in that. Because in many cases, we've lost ourselves. Or maybe we've never discovered ourselves. We've never had that period of really individuation. Maybe we've gone from our parents' home into our husband's house, and we've never really taken the time to figure out, wait, who am I? And what are the things that make me flourish?
Yes. And especially if you've been catering to someone else's demands, right? Catering to their emotions, their needs, so to speak, catering to walking on eggshells so they don't blow up at you. You probably have lost yourself and aren't even sure what you need or want.
So that was one of my points, and I'm going to reiterate it because you just said it. Stop catering to the other person's demands. If you want to flourish, you don't cater to other people's demands.
Mm-hmm.
I hear you, Deb.
Yeah. And part of that fits with the E course. So we'll just finish out the E step as we're walking through these points that you have, Diana.
Okay.
But not enabling somebody else, right? Being empathic and compassionate towards others without enabling abusive behaviors. So catering to his demands might be enabling abuse, enabling entitlement attitudes, and enabling selfishness. And so really understanding and being empathic towards somebody's needs without really stepping into that when it's to your own detriment.
I like being empathic towards yourself.
Oh, that's so important too. I'm glad you said that.
I do, because I think mainly we have a population of women who don't think enough of themselves, right? So
Right.
we want to have empathy for where other people are at without enabling their bad behavior. But I think sometimes we have the work to do of having empathy for ourselves, what we've experienced, what we've gone through, and what we no longer want to tolerate anymore. And
Absolutely.
it takes some chutzpah to do that, a little bit of a little bit of a grr, no, my value is way more than that's a part of that core work. Like, who does God say that I am?
Absolutely.
And how do I walk in that? Like, I'm a mighty daughter of the most holy God. We're a royal, we don't have to take the crumbs. And what does it mean to really discover who we are and to live out this life, I don't know, as a warrior, as your own hero,
Mm-hmm.
as the champion of your journey, co-laboring, I suppose, with Christ and the Holy Spirit. Because, ladies, when we talk about figuring all this out, what we're really saying is you're not alone in this journey. You do have a community here, but you also have the power of the Lord incarnate within you to help you and empower you. So you most certainly are not alone. And so a part of all of this work is really listening and diving into scripture as well. And if you've done any work with us before, you know that everything that we do is really biblically based and riddled with scripture so that you can apply that to your life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Do you want me to read my next point?
Yes, please.
Okay, I've got a lot of information here. You know me, I'm the information queen.
There
Okay,
you go.
so taking responsibility for your safety and sanity, not waiting for it to happen through, I'm going to use the term him. So if it's a coworker, if it's your spouse, I'm going to take responsibility for my own safety and my sanity. I'm not going to wait for someone else to do it, because I think sometimes we get into this, we want a rescuer, right? I mean, think about Cinderella, Snow White, all of that. So the question is, what do I need to do when I'm feeling tense or scared in order to get calm? And I'm no longer going to allow my emotions to be woven around his, or to regulate with his. Or maybe it's your boss. I'm no longer going to allow my boss to set the climate for me internally. And it's also not
Mm-hmm.
my job to keep my boss, my husband, whatever. It's not my job to keep them happy, or to manage the fallout, or to absorb the tension. So it's, and we talk a lot about that, don't we, Susan, in our groups about, and so it's easy to say it's not your responsibility, but it's quite another to remember that and to walk in that in a way that applies until it becomes a part of just your regular, I guess, your regular mojo, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, because it can be really, when you start practicing that, really just uncomfortable, right? And that level of discomfort can make you want to shift back into old patterns. And so learning how to get comfortable with that high level of discomfort is really important. And I think having the support of others around you to tell you that's normal, you're going to feel uncomfortable, and that's okay. It doesn't make it wrong.
Yeah. Um, so I guess do you want to read the next point, or do you want me to?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'm at living with a destructive person day in
Yeah.
and day out takes a toll on you emotionally, spiritually,
Mhm.
physically, even when you're putting on the armor of God. So if you're experiencing this, don't feel like you're not super spiritual, because even the most super spiritual person will be worn out here. Not that they're,
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know anybody more spiritual than Paul, but at any rate, know your limits of how much you can take without being overcome, and then plan to get away. If it's a moment, if it's a night, if it's a weekend, whatever, remove yourself, get respite when it's too much.
Mhm.
Second thing is let go of unrealistic hopes, dreams, and wishes for him or for your family, what it looks like, what you had thought, what you had hoped for. Let's walk in reality, right? That's the C step. Do your grief work on your losses. Have empathy for yourself and allow yourself to move through that. Release the outcome of this relationship. It's not your job to fix it, manage it. Um, let go of, again, let go of unrealistic needs for this person to include you, invite you, love you well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that you brought out that it does take a toll, even if you're trying to do it well and you're wearing the armor of God. Sometimes it takes a toll because the other person just is not safe for you, right? And so it's like saying you can live in a home that's riddled with black mold, and if you were just strong enough and smart enough that you could be okay and not get sick. And that's just not true, right? If it's unsafe no matter how healthy you are and how equipped you are with the armor of God. And so I don't want you to feel guilty if you're saying I'm not doing okay, right? And there must be something wrong with me, because in some of these destructive relationships, it's not possible to be okay.
There you go. And we want you to we want to invite you into healthy change, and for you to connect to support. So committing to yourself that you are worth it, and holding yourself accountable. I don't know about you, Susan, but I think it's really easy to fall into victim mentality. So the option is, am I going to be a victim, or am I going to be a hero? And for me, the hero is a growth mindset, pushing forward. I'm not going to give in to whatever it is that seems to want to get me down. And so that's
Mhm.
why we want to invite you. invite you to consider the group coaching class that we have coming up. I think we have a minimum or maximum of 15 ladies in each class. It's a group coaching experience. You'll be in a private class that no one else will have access to. So your confidentiality will be just to that group. And we have a private Facebook community as well for all the ladies who are doing the group. It'll be a 6-week class that will meet every other week. And I don't recall, I think we start in September, and there'll be work to do, great work to do, and they'll be moving through the steps to core. I just want to encourage you that if you're considering joining, if you feel like this is the next step for you, that you prayerfully plan which section you can get into that will allow you to show up and to be all there. Because we want your interaction on screen. We want you to be all there for yourself and with all of the other ladies. So if you can plan for that, choose a time in your schedule where you're most likely to be able to just set that time aside and be there for you.
Mm-hmm. And if you go to the link, there are a lot of options for timing as of right now. But like Diana said, once they fill up, those times will close out. And
Yeah.
it does fill at 15 women max. And so the curriculum is lovely and you'll have access to that. And you do get access to the replays. But so much of the work is in the experience and being with other women. And so that's why I think it is important that you choose a time where you can be present and show up. But if there's a time where you need to miss, you can't be there for any reason, you are able to watch the replay and still have the materials.
And you'll have the material forever. So Susan, we have a question. Do you want to take this question?
Yeah, let me read it. I can't.
I have one. It's from Deanna. It's in the chat. Now
okay, go ahead. We've got 3 questions too on the tracker.
Oh, okay. Well, Deanna's saying, I feel guilty about self-care. The question is, how then do I stay healthy?
Well, I think a big part of that first step is knowing your worth. I think you can't stay healthy unless you care for yourself well. And if you don't believe that you're worth caring for, you probably won't have a lot of motivation behind why should you care for yourself. But I think there's a lot in scripture that talks about you being made in God's image and the plans he has for your life, and that you are here to do good works for him. And so I think you're valuable. And if you're not well, you won't be able to step into that. You won't be able to flourish. And so I don't know where the guilt comes from, but really investigating what's the basis on that. Did somebody tell you you're not worth it? Did somebody tell you self-care is unimportant? Sometimes we have underlying beliefs that drive our behavior and we don't ever question those. And so I'm asking you, question that for yourself. What is your belief about yourself? Are you worth it? What would you add to that, Diana?
Well, I loved everything that you said, Susan. I would just add, the scripture that we quote in Philippians 2:4 is, don't look out only after your own interests, but look out after the interests of others. And it's been pointed out that it assumes we have a self, and that our self has interest, and that we get to be a self. And so there are many other scriptures. And I also think of, I think of Jesus. I think of how he took time. He was fully human and fully God, and yet he knew when it was time to care for himself and to come away. And he did that in many different ways, through resting, through prayer and fasting. There's so many mandates across scripture that would counter maybe the lie that you might believe that it's selfish for me to take care of myself. And, I like the analogy of, being on a plane, and if something happens on a plane, the first thing they tell you is, don't put the mask on your kid. Put your oxygen mask on first. And so again, we're talking about, that chart you used. We're looking for balance. What does a balanced life look like? And Christ in that scripture in Philippians is talking about not being so self-absorbed and self-centered that you don't consider other people. So we've got self-absorbed and self-centered over here, right? And then on this end, what's on this end, Susan?
The flourishing end?
Yeah.
Self-care?
Yeah, self-care.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Deanna's saying, as good Christians, we are to think of others first. I think that's a misnomer that some people have been taught that could lead to guilt. And I think what Diana is saying in the scripture she quoted is we are told to think of others as well as ourselves.
Yeah, it's not quoted as first. We're not supposed to I mean, we are supposed to die to ourselves. If you look at what dying to yourself means, I mean, we want to die to all of those carnal sins and qualities of the self so that we're free to let the Holy Spirit empower us and with discernment flesh out what God has for us to do. It's simply not possible for us to do it all or to serve all, right? And so there are times where we'll have to say, I can't serve today. I need to sleep, right? And Christ was a great example of that. So was Moses.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know we are at the bottom of the hour, but let's go ahead and answer these three questions that we have, Diana. I can't trust my husband with money. I found evidence of him cashing out some of our retirement funds, and then a bunch of expensive items began to show up at the house. I've always paid the bills because money in his possession disappears. This has been going on a long time, and he won't even admit there's a problem. I was going to finally file a divorce when he got laid off 1 week ago. Now I'm confused about what to do again. Any advice is much appreciated.
You want me to go?
Yeah, if you
So I
feel.
guess my first thought to that is what's different now that he's laid off? What's changed? It seems to me like there's been some wisdom in that I need to move forward and filing for a divorce, and now he's laid off. The situation hasn't changed. He hasn't changed. What's holding you back from what you were intending to move into? And again, here we go back to Susan, caring for yourself. I mean, whose responsibility is it to provide for you financially? If the other person in your household is not willing to be a good steward of the finances, how do you see your future? And what would it look like for you to take responsibility for yourself? Have understanding for whatever reason he's not doing it, he's not able to, he's not choosing it. But what does it look like for me to take responsibility for myself and care for myself? Again, shifting from a victim mentality to a growth mindset. Where do I need to grow? How do I step out of victim here? I'm no longer going to be a victim of his financial choices. And I do need to care for myself and my future. And maybe there's dependence as well. And so there's an urgent mandate to take care and to plan wisely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so maybe that him losing his job threw you a curveball that's causing you to doubt yourself. But I think you sound very clear. He doesn't think there's a problem. He may never think there's a problem. And so you didn't say this, but I can imagine, because I've worked with this population, I've been in this population, that we can get stuck in trying to convince someone that there's a problem, right? And saying it better, trying to convince them, show the evidence. You have some true facts here. You have facts. Create yourself a truth statement. He may not think there's a problem, but it seems pretty clear in what you wrote that you think you have a problem. So defining your problem can help tremendously. And what will you do with a problem that someone's frittering away your finances? and that you may not be able to protect yourself because you don't have control if it's shared income, shared monies. And so I love what Diana asked. What's changed? What's changed for you? What's causing the confusion?
Mm-hmm.
So I hope that helps. And we would love to help you move through that if you need more in our coaching groups. Getting strong, taking that owner mindset, becoming the heroine in your own story.
All right, I'm going to read the next one and let you take it. And then we'll finish up with takeaways. Does that sound good? Okay.
Yeah.
So my husband wants me to give him a date when I'll trust him again. Oh, that's so interesting. Or so let's just pluck one out of the clouds, right? Or all his work isn't worth it for him. Should I give him a timetable? He's saying so much, isn't he?
I think the short answer of that is no. Right? Yeah, why shouldn't you give him a timetable? Because we don't know how he's going to do his work, right? He's essentially asking you, when do you think I will have done enough work? Right? When can I get out of this? How long do I need to tick the boxes before we can go back to how things were? And I think he's still focusing on himself, right? It's not worth it for him. He's not really looking at, you don't really mention what's happened, right? But some betrayal, perhaps if you've lost trust in him. Doesn't really talk about what you experienced or the damage that's been caused to you or why he's even rebuilding trust with you.
He's just bullying.
And so it sounds like bullying. Yeah, I would agree.
I'm sorry. I couldn't help it. It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's just, I'm going to push forward. I'm going to make a demand on when you're going to trust me again. There's no mention of how do I earn that trust? What would that look like for you to trust me? Oh my goodness, how have I broken this trust? Such a different spirit, you know? What would it take for me to earn your trust again? You're of such great worth to me. Rather than, you're not worth it unless you tell me it's achievable and I need a date. If it's not in 30 days, I'm not sure. You know what I mean? Something like that, right?
Yeah. But what I would say is give yourself a timetable. How long can you watch and see? And then do it, not a cutoff, but sort of like, let me check in with myself in a month and see how I feel, see what change I've seen. I wouldn't mention that to him though. That's for you. Right. So that you don't get caught up in wasting years and years, is that you set check-ins for yourself.
Or I might give him a response as well as, I love what you said, Susan. I would do that on the side, and I might respond to him by asking him, I might respond to him by saying, I'll consider that. Help me to understand what the work is you'll be doing to earn my trust. So that I'll know you're doing the work. What specifically do you have in mind is the work that you'll be doing? And then maybe I can get a better idea of how long that might take. Just flip it back on him.
Yeah, because that's really the question, is at what date will he have completed his work? It sounds like it maybe hasn't begun yet.
Right.
With that heart attitude that Diana mentioned. All right, how are you feeling on time?
I'm okay.
So we have one final question. We'll do a quick wrap up for you. And then we hope to see you in our groups. When I ask my husband a question about our marriage, he refuses to answer. He will either ignore me or say, I'm not answering that. or if you don't know, I'm not telling you. Even when I asked if he loved me, we are like roommates at best, but the thought of being divorced or seeing him with someone else terrifies me.
I'm not sure who's pulled away from who, but it sounds a little bit like some gray rocking going on here, or some distancing on his part. Maybe he's apathetic. And what I'm hearing in your question is, or in your comment, is that that's really upsetting to you. And I guess I want to encourage you to do some work in strengthening, really, even some of the things that we talked about, especially at the end, Susan, about where we derive our self-esteem from, where we derive our sense of groundedness and love from. If someone is treating you, this to me sounds like a neglectful kind of relationship, if that's what's been occurring. And I would encourage you to kind of pivot and accept what he's showing you and what he's telling you. And if I pivoted and the person that I'm living with is not interested in engaging with me or answering questions, then I need to ask myself, what will I do differently? Because I certainly can't change him and I can't change this, but I can change me. What I focus on, what I move toward. And so that's really what we're talking about today. If this relationship is fading away and I'm allowing myself to fade away along with it, what will it look like for me to step into flourishing? And the first thing I would say is to strengthen your core self. And that means focusing inward. And I always tell my ladies that while you're doing this work, I give you permission. And I always say this, like, I have a shelf behind me here in my office. Put your marriage on my shelf for a while and do your own work. Just pause it. You don't have to carry it with you like that heavy weight, but you can take some time out to figure out, how do I regain my strength and myself? And the marriage, it will do what it does. But it's time for you to start looking inward. So maybe that would be helpful.
Yeah, I think that's a great response, because you could potentially flourish and live as roommates, right? The relationship may not be what you want, but you may have a really good life. And so you may not have to divorce, but do your own work, and then you may feel differently about your choices.
You'll have clear choices. Yeah. They're not, and here's the thing, and thank you for saying that, Susan. Your choices will not be based on need, with, Leslie would say, with a capital NEED. Your choices will be based on clear choosing. When we make choices based on need, we're coming from a position of weakness, not of strength. And those needs can inform our choices, and oftentimes they're not healthy choices. Does that make sense? Maybe you could elaborate on that a little bit, Susan. You're really good with that.
Well, I think we're making it out of a place of thinking we need it to survive. So if you think you need a relationship in order to survive, you might be telling yourself something that's not true. Right? We need a relationship with Christ. We need a relationship with ourselves, but we don't need, capital NEED, a relationship with a spouse in order to flourish or even be okay.
So, do we want to open up the opportunity here? Well, thank you, Lori. Lori's saying that makes a lot of sense. I love the way you articulate, Susan. You really make things clear and understandable, and I appreciate that about you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been so good to be with you, Diana, and with everybody here tonight. What's your biggest takeaway from tonight? What feels most important about what God has impressed on you? I'm just curious. I'd love to see that in the chat if you're willing. And what will you do with that?
Yeah, what takeaways? We want to know also, what did you hear from us today that is going to be empowering for you? I don't know if life changing is a strong statement, but what's empowering for you that you want to take away, that you're going to walk with, that's going to make a difference for you? And as you share in the chat, the reason that we do that is because we want you to collectively share your wisdom and what you've gleaned with everyone else, because we all learn from one another. And so if you guys can just give us a word salad and just pop in the chat what you've heard, we'd love to hear from you now.
Take time for yourself. Work on yourself first. Get strong. Flourishing is a choice. Yeah. I want to flourish, and it is possible. It is possible.
It's possible. How can I reconnect it? I'm so grateful, Deb, that what we had talked about is clarifying for you, and write it down. Remember that. It's a cycle. It's a pattern. My marriage doesn't have to be the way I want it in order for me to flourish. Absolutely. You get to determine what flourishing looks like, regardless of what's happening externally. Guarding your heart.
Yeah. And you do have a direction which way you go on that scale, right? So even if you're moving from a -4 to a -3, that's life-changing, right? It puts the momentum going towards health, and that can be a big difference.
Healing as yourself as an individual. I love that. Healing as myself and as an individual, worthy of love, respect, honor, truth. What else, ladies? What has been your big aha moment from today or from tonight? It's late for us, huh? The sun
It is.
Unfortunately, summer is kind of going away, because earlier in the summer it would still be light outside. And that's
Yes.
very sad, because we know what's coming. You and I are kind of in the same part of the climate.
Absolutely.
So, ladies, what else? Any other thoughts that you'd like to leave for all of your other sisters on board that you took away? Or maybe words of encouragement? We'd love to hear from you.
I don't have to continue to live in a place of fading. I can commit to flourishing, and there's a community of support to help me do this. Absolutely, Michelle. Thanks for putting that in the chat. And I just want to remind you all, there's another Facebook Live tomorrow. Diana, are you on that one?
Yeah, this is my week.
This is your week.
Oh, mercy. I'm going to tell you what it is.
Letting go of resentment. Karen has put that in the chat for us. Does that sound? Yeah. So this is the week of Diana. Tomorrow at noon, you'll get to hear more from Coach Diana and her wisdom on letting go of resentment.
Oh, tomorrow is healing and personal growth.
Oh, is it? Okay. Thanks for clarifying that.
Healing and personal growth. So I'm just loving this, you guys. Oh, why does it say letting go of resentment? That's not me. That's not what I am. Maybe it is. Maybe
Are you at noon or are you in the evening?
I'm at noon. I could be wrong, ladies. Topic to be determined, right?
Regardless, there will be a meaningful Facebook Live tomorrow at noon. Isn't that right?
Well, we want to invite you. We're going to have them all week, because this is what we do. We want to invite you to change. We want to invite you to growth. And I am checking very quickly what tomorrow is, if I can find it. While Susan reads some of the comments.
Yes. So healing time for me. Thank you. Yes, it is healing time for you. I love I'm reading your words, but there's so much power behind that. Deciding it's time for your own healing.
Huh. This is so interesting. I might be wrong. I might have it wrong on my calendar. We are getting different information. Tomorrow is a makeup Facebook Live with Leslie. So we all love to hear Leslie.
Yes, we do.
And that is the topic tomorrow with Leslie. Letting go of resentment. All right.
Very good. Well, thanks for clarifying that for us. And it's been great to be here with you this evening.
Absolutely. It's been good to be with you, my friend. And all of you friends out there, thank you for your honesty, your vulnerability, and sharing in the chat. And I hope that you took away some things that were helpful for you. We just enjoy working with you and being here.
Yeah. See y'all soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.